So I haven't really got on the fan fiction bandwagon yet. I know a bunch of people who write it. I know there's loads of successful ones out there that are held in really high regard. I'm pretty sure I read City of Bones. I'm pretty sure that came from a really successful Harry Potter fan fiction. I haven't really jumped into that world before, but I'm going to today. Except I don't like to do my own work. So I've gone to Fiverr and I have paid strangers to write fan fiction for me. So here we have £4. They will write a fan fiction up to 1,500 words long to give this person some money. So here's what I've requested. Please write Harry Potter fan fiction. I'd like Professor Flitwick to be heavily featured alongside Harry, Ron, Hermione, Draco and Luna if possible. If there are house elves too, that would be great. So I don't want to be too authoritarian, but if they can include house elves, I'd enjoy that. Okay, here we go. K-pop picture, title, I will write an NSFW, not safe for work, fan fiction. It's gonna get steamy. The review they chose to feature on the listing says, after she had written chapter 3, the protagonists fell in love so much, they married and lived happily ever after. Sounds like a wild fan fiction. So here's what they've said I can do. Submit 2 names, can be gay, straight, they can be non-human. 2 people you know, can be kind of weird. I'm okay with anything. I'm going to give them complete creative freedom here and just see what they come out with. £4 a pop for some of these. That's great value. Okay, here we go. They've got a Sith Lord from Star Wars, and the title is just, I will write simple fan fiction for you. 1,000 words, how much is that? Is it like a page? The most exciting and fascinating way all freelancer and artists can create is popular today. Oh, I don't really know what that means. This sounds perfect. Let's see what they come up with. Harry Potter fan fiction. Harry, Ron, Hermione and Draco are all working at a boring muggle job. That'll give it an interesting sort of scenario. I want there to be an altercation or argument of some kind, as well as subtle undertones of romance. Correct, that is a brief. Okay, I'm excited for that one. So here we go. Here is the one with maybe house elves. Professor Flitwick stood atop the precariously stacked tower of books on his desk, clapping his hands together in an attempt to call the rowdy young witches and wizards to attention. Okay, class, settle down now, settle down, he urged gently. Still chatting amongst themselves, the students appeared to either not have heard or be willfully ignoring the professor's words. Flitwick sighed, shaking his head. Ahem, class, he shouted. At last, all the students in the room went silent, heads whipping around to face the front of the room where Flitwick stood. There we go. Now, if everyone would take their seats, we can begin today's lesson. He turned to the blackboard and wrote Colovaria in white chalk, underlining the word before facing the class once more. Can anyone tell us what the function of this charm is? Hermione's hand went straight up, almost before anyone else had even seen or had the chance to register Flitwick's words. Harry and Ron seemed mildly startled by the speed at which her arm shot up into the air. Ah, lovely. Well then, Miss Granger, why don't you go ahead and explain to the class, said Flitwick with a quick nod. Authoritatively, Hermione started. Colovaria is a charm used to change colour. To cast it, one must simply point one's wand at the intended object to recite the incantation. Satisfied with her response, she couldn't help but give a small smirk, prompting eye rolls from Malfoy, who was sitting across the room. That's precisely correct, Miss Granger. However, for the purpose of making today's class a bit more challenging, we won't quite be working with objects. In order to test your skills, I've recruited several small house elves to be our test subjects for the day. Oh, and they are, quite caffeinated at the moment, so take this as a chance to work on your aim when it comes to casting on a moving target. Best of luck to all of you. Now get started. Seems a bit cruel, doesn't it? Practicing colour-changing charms on hyped-up house elves. As the house elf suddenly appeared in the room, Hermione's face fell. She turned to Harry, saying, Seriously? As if it's not bad enough we use them for slave labour, now they're forced to be our test subjects in class? Come on, Hermione, Harry replied. It's not that big of a deal, and besides, it's a harmless charm. It's not like it's going to hurt them. It's pretty... I'm guessing this person knows Harry Potter. This is pretty on brand. Maybe it won't hurt them, but it's a disgrace nonetheless. Treating them like lab rats, she scoffed, shaking her head. These are sentient, intelligent creatures we're talking about. At this, Ron sniggered. Sentient maybe, but intelligent? That's a bit of a stretch for sure. Frustrated, Hermione raised her hand once more. Professor, this is Oh wait, I've done Flitwick's voice. Professor, this is unacceptable. How do you expect us to exploit these poor creatures like this, even if it is for an assignment? I'm sorry, Miss Granger, but I already made the lesson plan, Flitwick said with a sigh. I like the thought that Flitwick has no imagination. He plans something and he has to follow it right through. Hey sir, I just can't bring myself to do this. I won't stand for it, Hermione said. Well, I guess if it bothers you that much, then why don't you find a fellow student to pair up with, and the two of you can practice the charm on each other. At this, Luna spoke up from the back of the room. I'd love to volunteer. I've been meaning to do something to my hair anyway, so this is perfect. Luna grinned and made her way over to stand by Hermione's desk. Okay, now that's settled, said the professor. If everyone could please get started. Come on now, get to it. He stepped out of the room, leaving the students to do their work. Luna took a seat next to Hermione and pulled out her wand. So which part of you would you like me to cast on? Your hair? Your robes? Maybe an eyebrow? Hermione replied, I suppose let's just stick to eyebrows for now. How about you? Go ahead and cast on my hair. I think a nice mint green would be lovely at this time of year, or perhaps a good shade of juniper. She trailed off, gazing somewhere into the distance. Anyway, let's get started. Aiming her wand at Hermione's head, she recited the charm, causing Hermione's eyebrow to shift in colour, from their usual brown to a shocking neon pink. Okay then, my turn now. Collivaria! She aimed her wand and cast the charm, successfully turning Luna's white blonde hair to a deep juniper blue. It was then that the two girls heard cruel laughter coming from across the room, coming from none other than Draco Malfoy. Nice eyebrows, Granger. You having fun up there on your high horse? Then again, I suppose it's not surprising you'd be the one crying over house elf rights, seeing as you're about one step on the social rung away from them. Mudbloods do tend to stick with their own kind, don't they? Hermione's face went red. She clenched her jaw, attempting to restrain herself from retaliating. Harry, however, was not as composed. What the hell did you just call her, Malfoy? Harry was fuming as he shot up from his desk. Oh, what's wrong, Potter? You're going to go and cry to your mum and dad? Oh, wait, that's right. You can't exactly do that, can you? Before he could finish the sentence, Harry pointed his wand at him, shouting, Collivaria! And Malfoy's skin immediately turned a bright, sickly shade of green. As Malfoy looked down at his hands, realising what had been done, he became enraged. You're going to regret that, Potter. Malfoy raised his wand to cast, but as he recited the charm, Harry ducked, and it hit the student sitting behind him, turning his hair bright purple. Startled, the student missed the house elf she was in the middle of charming at, and hit another person. It didn't take long until it was full-on chaos in the classroom, and within minutes, there were charms flying all around the room. Not a single student was left with their usual skin tone or hair colour. It was in the midst of the pandemonium that Professor Flitwick returned to the classroom. Appalled, he came to a halt at the scene in front of him. Just what do you think you're doing? He yelled with a stern glare. Can't imagine Flitwick being stern. Upon realising the professor had come back, silence washed over the room. After a few moments, there were scattered murmurs of, sorry, sir, and, oh, hell. After stepping up onto his desk, Flitwick began to announce, I want to know who started all this. Not a single one of you is leaving the classroom until the instigator is revealed. He crossed his arms. Well, anyone? Don't know why it sounded a bit like the Grinch. It didn't take long for fingers to begin pointing at a now bright orange Harry. Affronted, he shouted, You've got to be kidding me, it was Malfoy who started harassing Hermione. At this, Malfoy merely rolled his eyes, replying, Oh, come on, Potter, I was just kidding around. You're the one who pointed the wand first, and everyone saw you. Again, Harry turned to Flitwick. Professor, this wasn't my fault. I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Potter, but with so many apparent witnesses, I'm afraid I have no choice but to subject you to punishment. Flitwick raised his voice to speak to the class. If all the rest of you troublemakers would line up in front of my desk, I'll restore you back to your original colouring. And for you, Mr. Potter, you will have to figure out how to reverse the charm by yourself. As the rest of the class began to line up in front of Flitwick's desk, Hermione simply aimed the wand towards herself, effortlessly returning herself back to her usual state. After this, she turned to Harry. Harry, you're an absolute prat sometimes, you know that. I don't need you to stand up to Malfoy or anyone else on my behalf. Harry winced. I know, I'm sorry, I wanted to wipe that smug grin off the prick's face. Yeah, Hermione sighed. I know what you mean. I'm not going to sit around and watch you fumble your way through the counter charm. Besides, you're liable to kill yourself in the process. I'll fix you after class. Well, that's if... If what? Harry replied. I don't like the sound of if. If you admit that using house elves as test subjects is immoral and they deserve better. They deserve basic human rights just as we do. Unwilling to spend his week orange, Harry swallowed his pride and relented. Fine, I'll say it. Using house elves as a test subject is immoral and they deserve basic human rights just as much as we do. Hermione grinned, crossing her arms. There we go, that's all I wanted to hear. Now, let's get out of here so I can magic you back to normal. I really can't be seen hanging around with someone who's nearly the same colour as my cat. She laughed as she packed up her things, leading Harry out of the classroom behind her. Class had come to an end at last. Okay, so the brief was to include Professor Flitwick quite heavily, which they did, alongside Harry, Ron was there just, Hermione, Draco and Luna. If there are house elves, that would be great. So smash the brief. And this person clearly did their research or knew Harry Potter already, because that was, the characters acted like they would have normally, the situation was appropriate. That was good. That for $5, if I had a blog writing fan fiction, I would pass that off as my own, definitely. Okay, so now we've got the short, simple fan fiction where I've asked for Harry, Ron, Hermione and Draco to work at a boring Muggle job. And I'd like an altercation as well as subtle undertones of romance. Let's see what they put together. Since the very first adventure began with wizards and muggles, Harry Potter had a lot to do with his long-departed parents and his belligerent uncle, aunt and flossy cousin. Flossy cousin? Like doing the dance a lot, or just likes cleaning his teeth? Muggles had no use for magic, as do wizards of all kinds, but that was nearly 20 years ago. Weak opening paragraph, but setting the scene. Let's press on. Now I would dive back into Harry's present moment, if I were you. On the evening of his drive home, Harry had a brief discussion with Draco about the time Snape left him on a sombre note. I can only imagine Snape, Mr. Weasley and Filch having muggles being paid more than you expected, Malfoy. Don't try it, Harry, retorted Draco. Your impatience can have a burning desire to march into battle with Slytherin. Not a battle, just a march, snapped Harry. He had so much on his plate to complete his magic. Unfortunately, no one was fooled. The Ministry of Magic had intentions to be self-righteous in their authority, whilst muggles have a knack for demoralising young wizards and pushing aside their responsibilities. Just sort of sounds like someone's thrown a thesaurus together. I don't feel like any of these words go together. When your work is finished, Malfoy, and I'm sure it's a big finish, I won't allow you to go toe-to-toe with muggles, Harry said, almost raising his voice. And why is that, Harry? Draco asked demurely. I can tell you had a difficult time with dynamic muggle families like, Doobies? No, Dursleys, corrected Harry. Draco popped his eyes. Dursley, yes. They behaved badly, I'm sure. They didn't want you to work your magic with us since school was about to begin. I've had just about enough of your excuses, Harry said, exasperated and stolid. He finally left the shop and was driving out of Diagon Alley when he looked up and saw Hermione and Ron sitting on a veranda near Aragog Fountain. This person, it feels like they've just got like a Harry Potter fan fiction generator online and they've just put random Aragog Fountain. I mean, maybe Hagrid donated a fountain in Aragog's name. I don't know. The fountain had the sound of a gushing waterfall. It became a distraction to passers-by, drivers and kids beneath the city. I can't bear to watch those muggles laughing at our faces, Hermione. The next thing I can do is call up Hagrid about work equality. Grow up, Ron, snapped Hermione. Muggles run a much tighter ship than wizards do. I don't even understand. I know I asked for an altercation. I would have liked some scene setting. It couldn't get any more precarious than Muggle and wizard activity could look. Unfortunately, there was no worse than duelling with Voldemort back in the day of the Philosopher's Stone, the Chambers of Secrets, the Goblet of Fire and the Horcruxes. They were satiated in Harry's memory. For even Ron and Hermione, they had ruminated also. That evening at Aragog Fountain, Draco calmly stood at the veranda where Ron and Hermione once sat, and he quietly tapped his fingers until something sensational happened. A spark flickered, and Draco looked up. Ron and Hermione could be in trouble, he thought. He decided to call Harry's flat for some help. Draco raced to the flat as fast as he could, but the landlord was unavailable. Oh, I'll just fly him out of there, huffed Draco, and he went to find the right window where Harry was staying. They've got this charm where a spark flies out and you know your friends are in trouble and then you just know what window to fly to, even if the landlord isn't available. Harry, he yelled. but Harry could not hear Draco's calls, trying to suppress his workday fiascos. I like how that's a loud activity, just repressing memories of your terrible workday. "Oh, go back to work, you shallow ingrates," muttered Harry. This time Malfoy wielded his wand and flicked a beam of light at Harry's window. The beam rocked Harry's room, and Harry jumped in such a fright. "What the bloody hell was that?" Harry said angrily. Malfoy hollered, "Harry, you gotta help me. Ron and Hermione have vanished somewhere." How does he know that? He just had a spark come out of his finger at Aragog Fountain. "Is it Muggle trouble?" "I guess," said Malfoy with panic in his tone. But suddenly Harry learned the truth of what Malfoy had said. He knew he had to help Ron and Hermione out of this Muggle trap. While Malfoy and Harry picked up the trail where Ron and Hermione were being kidnapped, a band of notorious Muggles had a surprise visitor. Bellatrix Lestrange and another sassy witch named Engelbrink hissed at them. A few other Muggles and Death Eater figures cowered nearby as they watched Ron and Hermione retaliate. "We were so close," groaned Ron. "Oh, do shut up," shrieked Hermione at her loudest. The sound shook the place and gave a malignant Muggle a hint of vehemence. This is bad. "She's waiting for someone," one Muggle whispered. "Which someone?" The Muggle didn't reply. "Harry Potter?" asked another Muggle. At first it was strangely quiet. Engelbrink had a wicked thought. "The boy of Lily and James?" Bellatrix's eyes grew wild in glee, and she reviled Ron and Hermione. "Lover boy, your friend must not become headmaster." What is going on? Someone's going to be headmaster now, are they? "Let them go, Lestrange," bellowed Malfoy from behind. He came off to a great start, not letting them know where Harry was. The duel ensued as the Muggles fought bravely with the Death Eaters, but it was tough and a near-death experience. One by one, the Muggles zeroed in on Engelbrink and led her away. I don't think this person knows what Muggle means. Harry finally emerged and was able to free Ron and Hermione. Malfoy was left alone and able to stand his ground. "Expelliarmus!" Bellatrix fell back in horror and was gone. The Death Eaters finally surrendered their wands and dispersed. The next morning at Diagon Alley, Ron and Hermione fully reconciled and kissed. Harry and Draco decided to pay a visit to Ginny. "Wait, Draco, we wanted to see what was left of your father's unfinished magic." "Why, I'd be honoured, Hermione," sniffed Draco, and stroked Hermione affectionately. All four wizards left for Ginny's home. So, sorry, my subtle undertone of romance that I asked for was the last four sentences where Ron and Hermione kiss, then Hermione is stroked affectionately by Malfoy as they all go off to Ginny's house. That's the romance. Some Muggles, which now means magic people, teamed up with some Death Eaters, I think, and Hermione and Ron were kidnapped by Bellatrix and some Muggles who Malfoy destroyed, and someone had a bad day at work. Not sure that met the description, but fine, okay, it's an experience, I suppose. Wouldn't bother with that one. Let's jump into the one that's not safe for work. So I gave them full creative freedom. They said there can be smut. Sorry if this is rude. Let's see what they've come up with. I just want to say they've offered smut. They've offered romance. They can be not human. And I've given them full creative control. So we're going to learn a lot about Fiverr user Fisher Barker from what they choose to provide with full control. Harry and Ginny had been together for about 2 years now, and they were both only a few hand grabs from graduating. The relationship was really simple. Spend as much time together as they can before they have to go back to their separate dorm rooms, and it was really hard to find alone time. They always had to hang out in hallways, even though there were others around. Suddenly, the two found themselves in the Gryffindor. They were in the Gryffindor. Don't know if that means they were in a lion or they found Godric Gryffindor and climbed inside of him. But they were in the Gryffindor alone while classes were going on. Ginny was worried her boyfriend wanted to break up with her or something, but upon heading towards Harry's bed, she saw a nervous look in his eyes. She gulped. "Harry? What's wrong, love?" Harry shook his head, sliding over slightly and gesturing to her to sit with him. The two had never been alone in a room like this before. The air was thick. He breathed out as he spoke. "I just really wanted to see you alone. It's been 2 years and I've never been alone in a room with you. We'll probably get a lot of crap from the professors, but we graduate soon, so it's worth it." I know what Harry's thinking. She giggled at him, grabbing onto his arm and intertwining it with her own. She leaned over and pressed a soft kiss on his cheek. "So, what were your plans?" "Well," Harry snapped his fingers so the room went dark. "I wanted to try and make a special moment for us. If you're okay with it, but if not, I understand." Good for Harry, consent is important. He nodded slightly, still too nervous to look in her eyes. "If you'll have me, I'll be really gentle and caring. I promise. She smirked at her boyfriend's obvious eagerness in his tone, but she swiftly agreed. Gently, he leaned forward, pressing his lips swiftly against hers, to which she eagerly kissed back. The kiss was somewhat gentle, but it got desperate, fast, as he guided her back onto his bed. They're not concerned that Dean, Seamus or Ron, in particular, could walk in at any moment if they're in Harry's dorm. Ginny opened her I'm not going to read any more of this. It just jumps into smut and filth, as the writer described it. Oh, my voice cracked. I feel so awkward about this. Let's just skip through. God, it gets ridiculous. Skip through the filth. Jesus, it's descriptive. Ginny pulled him down and whispered, "We did it," with a giggle. "Yeah, we did," Harry said, and pressed a kiss against her lips. "I love you," Ginny mumbled. "I love you too," said Harry, before he went to clean up. So... Okay, wish I hadn't done that one last. That's a little bit awkward, and then now I feel uncomfortable. I don't know how to end the video. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, please, for my awkwardness and for the £15 I spent on the fan fiction. Leave me titles for Harry Potter fan fiction in the comments. I'll pick the best ones. If I pick yours, I will get someone on Fiverr to write your fan fiction for a future video, and I'll send you an Elder Wand. So leave me some titles down in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't already. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. The links are in the description box, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.